Welcome everyone. Welcome councillors. Welcome officers. Welcome viewers online. Today is the meeting to elect the Mayor for Moyne Shire Council going forward, and also the ordinary council meeting of the 9th of November 2021. My name's Bill Millard. I'm CEO at Moyne Shire, and part of our governance rule in the election of Mayor is that the CEO takes over as the temporary chairperson to chair that part of the meeting where the election occurs. This is in accordance with the Local Government Act 2020, Governance Rules Part 2, Division 1, 5.2. Acknowledgement of country. The temporary chair will read the following. We begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land which we meet today and pay our respect to their elders past and present. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Recording of council meetings. Please note that today's meeting is being video recorded. This recording will be uploaded to council's website and will be accessible by the general public. By participating in and addressing those present at the meeting, you consent to any information you disclose, including any personal information or sensitive information, being recorded and uploaded to the website. The prayer. Almighty God, we humbly beseech your blessing on this council, direct and prosper its deliberations for the welfare of the people of Moyne Shire. Amen. Amen. Apologies. There are no apologies. As a first order of business, I would call on the exiting Mayor, past Mayor, immediate past Mayor, Councillor Mead, to address the meeting and perhaps quickly reflect on that year as Mayor of Moyne Shire Council. Thank you, Councillor Mead.
Thanks very much, Mr Millard. Firstly, thanks very much to family at home who have supported me over the previous 2 years as Mayor. It's been, obviously you can't do it without that support on the home front. I'd like to thank the team on farm. It's honoured to be a dairy farmer within the Great Shire of Moyne, and it can't be done without a good team of supporting to be able run the farm whilst I'm not there. Thanks very much to the CEO and the executive management team. It's been great to work closely with them over the previous 2 years. I think we've got I'll put it out there as one of the best teams, if not the best team, within Victoria, if not Australia. We've got a great experienced team that work well together and work really well with council as well. And special mention for Mr Millard for the close working relationship that the Mayor and CEO does have. Also, the broader team at Moyne, I think over the last 2 years has been heavily COVID affected, and a lot of the team, we've got over 300 on the team that have had to change the way they operate and change the way they work, whether it be from home or in and out of the office in the split shift type arrangement. But I think what they've done is they've knuckled down and worked hard and got on with the job of servicing Moyne ratepayers. I think they've done a great job, and hats off to the whole team at Moyne over the previous 2 years. Also, just thank the community for the support. I mean, talking about COVID times, I think it's been probably the highlight to see how well the community has stood up in trying times and shown some strength and resilience and got behind the fellow community members, helping each other out, and also getting right behind our small business community as well. So I think the community has done a great job over the previous 2 years during COVID times, and now that we come out the other end, we certainly encourage that continued support of small business, but also get around our events as they get back on their feet. Just lastly, I'd like to thank fellow councillors over the previous 2 years across 2 different terms of councils. It's been great to work with. I think we've worked really well as a cohesive team with strong debate along the way, which is of course healthy, but in the end I think we're here for the right reasons, which is working for and with the Moyne ratepayers within the Great Shire of Moyne. So thanks to fellow councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mead. Thanks, Councillor Mead, and certainly the officers and staff and myself reciprocate those kind words. So well done on your term, and we'll move into the order of business. Item 1 is the mayoral term. Councillors, we determined the mayoral term prior to the election of mayor. I guess so. Essentially, you get to know what you're getting in for. So 1 or 2 years. Traditionally, we've obviously had a single year for the mayoral term, and we also have a schedule of meetings outlined. And you'll note in there that there's a meeting on November the 8th, 2022, which is a year hence, as an outlier from our normal meeting of every first Tuesday of the month. So that's really to cater for this meeting. Can I have a mover for the recommendation that Council determine the mayoral term for a period of 1 or 2 years and determine the election held next year at the scheduled meeting of 8th of November 2022? Councillor Purcell?
Thank you, Mr Millard. Yes, I move that the Council determine the mayoral term be a period of 1 year and that the next mayoral election be held at the scheduled meeting on the 8th of November 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Mead? Are there any alternate... sorry, Councillor Purcell?
Thank you, Mr Millard. No, I don't think we need to do, for as far as I'm concerned. I think it's a reasonable... We've had 1 year in the past, and I think in 12 months' time it's time to have another election.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Councillors, I'll move to put that motion. All those in favour? The motion's carried 7-0. Item 2, the election of mayor. In electing the mayor for a single year going forward, I think councillors are well aware of the process involved. I will call for nominations for the position of Mayor of the Moyne Shire Council going forward. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr Millard. I nominate Councillor Jordan Lockett.
Councillor Lockett, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, thank you.
Are there any other nominations? Councillor Dukas.
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Councillor Purcell.
Councillor Purcell, do you accept the nomination?
I'll accept the nomination.
Are there any further nominations? Councillor Smith.
I would like to nominate Councillor Gleeson.
Councillor Gleeson, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
Are there any other nominations, councillors? No further nominations? Councillor Purcell.
Mr Millard, I think this should be a head-to-head contest, and for that reason I'd like to withdraw my acceptance of that nomination.
Councillor Purcell was nominated by Councillor Dukas, has withdrawn. Mr Ledden, Councillor Purcell can do that at any time.
Yes, Mr Millard. So in accordance with our governance rules, once elected, confirmed, and then Part 6.9, a councillor may withdraw their candidature at any time.
Thank you. So, councillors, we're clear. So the process that we follow at this point is to, if there's more than one candidate, the councillors present at the meeting must each vote for one of the candidates by a show of hands. I will put forward...
Mr Mayor, Mr Chairperson, I've lost the screen here somewhere.
Thank you. Jim, you're on, Councillor Dukas, you're on screen for us.
I've got something, there's something gone wrong. Look.
Can you hear us clearly though?
Am I still on screen?
No, you're not on screen. Yes, you are now.
Oh, there's something not right.
Councillor Dukas, yeah, you're fine there now. That's fine. Councillor Dukas?
I'll excuse myself from the meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Dukas has excluded himself from the meeting. So Councillor Dukas, therefore, Mr Ledden is no longer present?
Through you, Mr Millard, so that is correct. We'd have to record that Councillor Dukas has left the meeting if he is not present in the meeting.
He's not present. Thank you.
Yep.
We'll continue. We'll continue, and we still need to determine if there's more than one candidate, the councillors present at the meeting must each vote for one of the candidates by a show of hands. Can I ask for a show of hands for those supporting Councillor Lockett to be Mayor of Moyne Shire going forward? There are three, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Foster and Councillor Lockett. Can I have a show of hands for those in support of Councillor Gleeson? There are three, again, Councillor Smith, Councillor Mead and Councillor Gleeson. Um, 8.5 under election of more than one candidate. If two or more candidates have an equality of votes, one of them must be declared defeated under subclause 4. The declaration must be determined by lot in accordance with clause 9. Mr Ledden?
Thank you, Ms.
Sorry, Councillor Purcell.
8.7.
Sorry?
Does that 8.7 apply?
No. If there are only 8.7 says if there are only two candidates remaining in the election and neither candidate receives a vote of absolute majority of council, the election fails. But if item 8.5, if two or more candidates have an equality of votes, 3 all, one of them must be declared defeated under subclause 4, which is by lot. Yeah? 5 trumps. In my view, Councillor Purcell.
Yep. So we're back to 2, and the election failed, as in voting. We go to lot.
Yep.
Out of a hat.
Yep.
It's actually not the way I read it.
There's 2 cards in a hat. One says defeated, one's clear.
Thanks,
If I may.
Councillor Gleeson. Yeah, Councillor Purcell.
5 says if 2 or more candidates.
Yep.
2 or more.
Yep.
7 says if there are only 2 candidates. I would suggest 7 trumps 5.
In the event the election fails. We might just have a deferral for a moment. Councillor Mead?
Mr Millard, would it be useful to have a short adjournment to clarify the situation?
I think that would be useful, Councillor Mead. You'll move to that effect?
Yeah.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillors, all those in favour? Those against? A short deferral, we'll have a 5-minute deferral. Thank you. Welcome back, councillors, officers, viewers. Current situation is that the election has failed to achieve an absolute majority, which is a requirement under the Local Government Act. So perhaps Mr Ledden might just refer to the relevant clause before we take the next step.
Thanks, Mr Millard. So to make it clear, under the Local Government Act 2020, the Mayor must be appointed by an absolute majority of councillors. An absolute majority of councillors means for our council 4, because we have 7 councillors. That's irrespective of how many councillors are present at a meeting. So clearly at this point in time there were 2 nominations and they achieved 3 votes each. So under our governance rules, the election fails, the election of mayor fails. So in the event of a failed election, the Chief Executive Officer calls a temporary adjournment, which we've just had, and can conduct a new election. If that fails, Council may resolve to meet at another time to elect the mayor. And then to run the council meeting, the council may appoint an acting mayor to chair the ordinary council meeting that is to follow.
Thank you, Ms Ledden. Is there any questions around that before I do the next step, which is to seek nominations for the position of Mayor of the Moyne Shire Council? Clear? Okay, can I call for nominations for the position of Mayor for Moyne Shire Council going forward? Councillor Foster.
Mr Millard, I nominate Councillor Jordan Lockett as Mayor.
Councillor Lockett, do you accept the nomination?
Thank you. Yes.
That's a yes. Thank you, Councillor Lockett. Are there any other nominations? Councillor Smith.
Mr Millard, I'd like to nominate Councillor Gleeson.
Councillor Gleeson, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do.
Are there any other nominations? Then we'll move to a show of hand for the candidates. Could I have a show of hands, those in favour of Councillor Lockett as Mayor of Moyne Shire going forward? Councillor Purcell, Councillor Foster and Councillor Lockett, 3. And those in favour, by a show of hands, Councillor Gleeson. Again, there are 3, Councillor Smith, Councillor Gleeson and Councillor Mead. Thank you, councillors. That's clear that the election has failed to resolve in an absolute majority the mayoral role. It's my suggestion now, given the scale of the agenda in front of us for the ordinary council meeting, that we elect a temporary mayor, an acting mayor, and I'll seek a nomination for acting mayor. Councillor Purcell.
I'd like to move that Councillor Mead be appointed acting mayor.
Councillor Mead, do you accept that nomination?
Happy to accept an acting role.
Thanks, Councillor Mayor. We would need a seconder for that. No. Are there any other nominations for the role of acting mayor? There being no other nominations, I declare that Councillor Mead takes the role of acting mayor, and we'll have, I guess, further commentary around a process for finalisation of the mayoral election in due course through a future meeting. Councillor Purcell.
Mr Millard, Part B says the council may resolve to meet another time to elect the mayor. Do we do that now, or?
Through Mr Millard, could do. I think Councillor Purcell, if the council is of a mind of when that might be.
Good question.
So the option, of course, is either a special meeting or a future ordinary council meeting, which we've already set prior to this.
Fair enough.
So I think through Mr Millard, Councillor Purcell, that section reads or, so I guess it has failed again. Yep. Or, so I guess the council will determine when to meet and consider again.
Yep. So with that, I'll invite Councillor Mead to resume the chair for the acting mayor.
Here you go, Kev. Well,
Okay, thanks, Mr Millard. Thanks, councillors. Happy to step in temporarily until the matter is resolved. I've been informed that since we haven't been able to get number 2 sorted, that we'll also postpone item number 3, which is the election of the deputy mayor. So that's postponed. Will be held at the same time as the rescheduled mayoral vote. So we move on to item 4, which is the ordinary council meeting schedule for 2022. So, Mr Millard to introduce, thanks.
As discussed earlier, Mayor, first Tuesday of each month, councillors, and setting the agenda allows Ms Cook and others to prepare the program accordingly. We've dropped out the January meeting of January 4th on the basis we'll be meeting on the 1st of February anyway. So we feel that's the best schedule for us going forward, Mayor.
Thanks, Mr Millard. Any questions, councillors? I'll seek a mover for item 4, please. Councillor Purcell's moved. Councillor Foster is seconded. Councillor Purcell?
No need, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Foster?
No need, thank you.
Okay, councillors voting on item 4, all those in favour? Motion is carried 6-0. Now we will move on to declarations of conflict of interest. So do we have any of those for any item on today's agenda, please? Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to declare a conflict in item 9, the Community Grants Program, which refers to Leadership Great South Coast, of which I am chair.
Thanks, Councillor Foster. We should add that there is a form to fill out which is lodged with the Executive Assistant, which I believe has been done already.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes, Mr Ledden?
Mayor, I'd also like to declare as a Leadership Great South Coast Board member on item 9.
Thank you. Any others? Mr Davis?
Thank you, Mayor. Item 11, Ryan Corner and Hawkesdale Wind Farm, having had a previous involvement in that approval process.
Yes, and for those 3 matters, the lodger of those conflict of interest will step out of the room for those items. Anything else, councillors, for declaration of conflict of interest? Okay, being none, we'll move on to the confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. Do you have any questions, firstly, from the minutes for the previous meeting held on the 5th of October? No questions. I'll seek a mover, please, to confirm those minutes. Councillor Smith has moved, seconded by Councillor Gleeson. All in favour? Motion's carried 6-0. We have no public participation today, so we will move on to item 5.
Declarations.
Yep, done that one.
Conflict. Just I had to register my conflict.
Oh, well, sorry, we have one more conflict of interest to register, Mr Millard.
Sorry, Acting Mayor, but item 21, CEO Employment Committee, I've got a direct conflict.
Yep, thank you. We'll add that to the list already. Now we'll move on to item 5, which is the monthly financial performance report, introduced by our Director for Community and Corporate Services, Mr Kevin Ledden. Thanks, Mr Ledden.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, this finance report sets out our actual results compared to seasonalised budgets for the first 3 months of the year. So, start of July round to 30 September. In an operational sense, and we keep mentioning, despite COVID, we are tracking quite well. We've had a couple of issues around timing of wind farm revenues. We had a positive grants commission allocation compared to budget. So at the 3-month mark, our $45 million operational budget is positive. Our capital works program, as you're aware, councillors, at the last meeting you approved the rollover, so money's unspent but allocated last financial year to the 21-22 financial year. So the original capital works budget of 15 million becomes 30 million. So again, pretty much identical to last year in targeting a $30 million program. But as you might recall, there were a number of grant timings, etc., local roads and infrastructure monies that came in late in the financial year that did contribute to that. So I think we're making headway into reducing rollovers. And at the 3-month mark, we've actually expended 4.3 million towards that target. There's a number of variations that are set out in this finance report, councillors, and I think there's some positive news in relation to council undertaking the $900,000 fully funded roadworks at Tower Hill as part of that redevelopment. The COVID outdoor activation program, again, monies that we will assist our business, and also the boat ramp at Boggy Creek, which are positives. So in summary, councillors, our financial position remains really strong. Cash is ahead of schedule because of some of those carry forwards and timings of grants. So our liquidity and our financial ratios are quite positive. So happy to, and there's the detailed capital works commentary as usual, Mayor and Council. So happy to take questions, Mayor, but the recommendation is that the 3-month finance report and variations be approved.
Thanks, Mr. Ledden. Do we have questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Just a couple of questions regarding some capital works programs, if possible. Just the Martins Point Playground, Railway Place and the Regent Street works, please. Thank you. Just looking for completion dates, if possible.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Lockett. Mr. Ledden.
I might defer those to Ms Farrell. Is that okay? Or is that right?
Do I need to come around?
I can do those. Probably go.
Thanks, Ms Farrell.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. So in regards to Martin Place, the final works are underway and just final touch-up, so it's due by the middle of November as an estimate. There is an element of the playground which is installation of a timber carving that will be due to be completed by the end of December. And then in regards to Railway Place, works are obviously underway and they're scheduled to be completed by early December.
Thanks, Ms Farrell. Any other questions on the finance report? Yes, Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Just on the indicators on page 3 of 40, and I know you briefly mentioned some of those. If you could just take us through some of the actual year-to-date figures are quite significantly different from the adopted budget and the updated budget. If you could just sort of give us a brief explanation of why there are such significant differences in those.
Yep, through Mayor, thanks, Councillor Purcell, and they are quite significant. Positive, mind you, which is pleasing. But the operating surplus, which is sitting at 16 million compared to our adopted budget and an updated budget of around about $1 million, is due to the accounting recognition of us raising our rates and charges of $25 million already. We know we collect them generally in 4 instalments across the year in cash. So again, it highlights the difference between accrual accounting and cash. Across the year, our expenditures will catch up and we should reduce back down to something like that initial budgeted operating result of around $1 million. So that's the most significant one that skews that picture. Our cash and investments and therefore our working capital or liquidity ratios are quite high compared to our budgets again. The contributing factors there are the rollovers, so we haven't spent those monies, we've carried them on to the new financial year, and I think from memory the gross expenditure was perhaps around 10 million, so they're well underway, most of those projects, not all of them, to be spent this year. And the other contributing factors were we often receive half of our grants commission, which is close to $5 million in June for the next financial year. Again, that hits our bank account. And we also were successful in receiving COVID infrastructure stimulus monies in June, which will be spent this year. So they really do again skew up our cash balances and therefore our liquidity ratios. So our balance sheet looks very strong at present.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations on the strong result again, Mr. Ledden. You mentioned the COVID activation grants. Any sense of how those might be utilised and how quickly? Because I'm guessing that the response needs to be relatively fast if we're going to support businesses in the short term.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Foster, and through you, Mayor. So, Council, as a rural council, has received two lots of $150,000, Part A, Part B, as per that outdoor activation program, so $300,000 in total. How that money is to be spent will be determined very quickly and needs to be back with state government in November. But clearly they are designed around outdoor activation. So there is the potential for stages in Koroit, parklets, activities across the Shire that will help in that outdoor COVID recovery events, etc. So that's probably a generalisation, but I think in all there are 13 components to the $300,000 that's been identified by the officers.
Okay, so watch that space.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lennon.
Thanks, Councillor Foster. I should note, councillors, that Councillor Dukas has been able to rejoin us on the screen. Do we have any other questions for the finance report? Councillor Purcell?
On page 18 and 19 of the of 40, there are three projects, if I could have an update of the status of the Acting Mayor Housing Strategy for the Great South Coast, the Mortlake and Koroit Industrial Land Supply, and also the status of the Port Fairy Community Services Centre meeting room conversion, if I could.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Purcell. Mr. Lennon, would you like to take those or deflect?
Through you, Mayor, thanks, Councillor Purcell. I'll take the last one, and then Mr. Davis might do the first two. So the conversion of the large meeting room at the Port Fairy Community Services Centre is complete. The building works. That's to accommodate 33 licensed 3-year-old kinders, to accommodate 5 hours of kinder being introduced next year. So that's pleasing. I think that project has gone well with the contractor despite COVID, and it's a Ballarat contractor, and at one point in time there was a Ballarat lockdown. So despite that and some challenges, I think that's really pleasing. The only component left of that project is the front playground.
And Mr. Davis?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Industrial land work has been going on in the background for both Koroit and Mortlake, and in the time between the publication of these figures and the current figures, there's been some money expended with regards to projects to create further opportunities in Mortlake for industrial land. The Koroit structure plan previously approved, I believe last year, is in the process of being prepared for a planning scheme amendment early 22, which also includes industrial land components. The worker housing for the Great South Coast, I'm pleased to advise the council that we've got an executive officer on board and the consultancy has been awarded, and that work is underway. There's been meetings with all 7 councils to kick that off, and I'll be happy to bring a further update to that work to the next council meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Dukas with the question.
Yes, thank you, Acting Mayor. Got to get this right. On page 21 of 40, under the heading Transfer Station Glass Infrastructure Upgrade, it says funding received. Where did we get that funding from? And I'm assuming that that upgrade at the transfer station is the quarry that's owned by Mr. Bartlett, or what we call Haberfield's Quarry.
Mr. Lennon, were you able to receive that question?
Through you, Mayor, Councillor Dukas, that page is part of the roll forwards from last year, so it is obviously a program that was we received the grant funding last year and will be spent this year, but we may have to take on notice the actual source of that funding.
Okay. Yeah, because I know it's a rollover, but nothing's come forward in all that time to tell us what's actually happening. Because I thought when that company, whoever they were doing the glass, they were only at that quarry on a temporary basis. So it'd be nice to know if they've got a long-term contract to use a quarry, if that's what it's for.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Dukas. Mr. Lennon, take that on notice and come back to us.
We'll take that on notice.
Yep.
I think we had the trial.
No problem.
So, yeah, we'll see where that fits.
Any other questions for the finance report? Okay, I'll seek a mover, please. Councillor Gleeson has moved and seconded by Councillor Purcell. Councillor Gleeson to speak to the motion, please.
Thanks, Acting Mayor. Just to reiterate Councillor Foster's comments earlier, every month we get a financial update, and it's always it's positive, and this one is positive because we've been able to get some money for the COVID activation, the Boggy Creek boat ramp, which has come from outside sources, which is fantastic, and some more work with the Tower Hill Reserve. So that's great stuff that comes into the Shire. And it's great to have the confidence, Mr. Ledden, in you and your team, and for another thorough presentation. So thank you.
Councillor Purcell.
I'd just like to echo those remarks. It's a good result, and a continued good result from everyone involved.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors? Questions? Sorry, questions have been held. Any comments? For or against? We're all good. Back to Councillor Gleeson as the mover.
No need, Mayor.
Councillors, all those in favour of item 5? That motion is carried 7-0. Item 6, which is the Mortlake Rec Reserve Committee of Management Community Loan Application. Thanks, Mr. Ledden.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So, councillors, this is another application for a community loan. Council does have a community loan policy. I think as the report points out, and you'd be aware, this has been a really active committee. And if you look at the list of improvements that have been done to that facility over recent years, it's pretty outstanding. But this moves on to the lighting project. As you can see in the report, the funding proposal, Local Roads Community Infrastructure Program 200, relying on a loan, and it's a maximum, I'd point out, and as the report indicates, the committee have been pretty active in getting other funding, so it's more than likely to be less than 100,000. And you can see the other contributions from users and their committee management. So it's a total project of $400,000 that clearly will have benefits in utilisation of the facility. So, in putting the recommendation forward, it's clear that council needs to vary the loan policy, which has a maximum of 50,000 and a 7-year repayment term. So I'll just point that out, Mayor. But happy to take questions, but the recommendation is that council authorise variations to the community loan policy and approve an interest-free loan up to $100,000 to be repaid over 12 years for the Mortlake Rec Reserve Community Management for the DC Farron Oval Lighting Project.
Thank you, Mr. Ledden. Do you have any questions, firstly, councillors? No questions? Okay, a mover, please. Councillor Smith has moved, and seconded by Councillor Gleeson. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Acting Mayor. Mr. Ledden gave a fair overview of this, and this has been to workshop. Yes, so this is a very active committee, and it's a $400,000 project which will enable the DC Farron Oval to have 200 lux lighting, which gives them the ability to host district grade cricket and just forget what it is, the level of football. But it is a great asset, will be a great asset for the Mortlake community and the surrounding district. So I've got pleasure in recommending the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Councillor Gleeson, the seconder.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. A committee that wants to get things done, and that will support them if they're prepared to have skin in the game. Just 2 comments. Again, reiterating if other money becomes available, that we lend the reduced rate, and I'd encourage this committee to pay back as quick as they can to enable other groups such as them to take advantage of the council's loan policy. So, very happy to support Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Any other councillors wishing to speak to the motion? Okay, Councillor Smith is the mover.
No, nothing further to add, except that it is for the lighting standard for district cricket and regional football competitions. That's what the 200 lux lights will give the Oval the capacity of. Thank you.
Thanks for enlightening us on that one. Councillors, okay, voting on item 6, all those in favour? Motion is carried 7-0. Moving on to item 7, which is the Moyne Shire Council Annual Report for the financial year of 2020-2021. Mr. Ledden.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, the annual report really is the council's report card back to the community on a whole range of matters or performance over the 2021 year. So if you look at the report, the financial statements are attached to that. We've already spoken about a strong financial result and position for the year. I think working through COVID has been challenging for all at council, the council staff, but despite that, the interruption to service over that year has been very minimal. Council staff have adapted on the way, and also in terms of project delivery. So to deliver $22 million worth of of projects in addition to service delivery across the board. I think it's been a pretty outstanding effort by the staff, so that's acknowledged in the annual report. There's also a range of information around the 7 key result areas, so measuring against the old council plan, if we want to call it that. A lot of information on what was delivered there. The other challenges that this council has supported, and we've, I think, ticked every box and met every deadline in relation to 24 requirements under the new Local Government Act. Most of those across that year, there's a couple to finish off, but if you think back to the community engagement policy that you adopted, that really led the way in terms of the community vision. We've never had one before, so community panels and surveys and the whole range of community consultation that was done to develop that document, which is a community document, and then the new council plan, and a whole range of other plans and policies. I think combined with COVID, it's been a pretty significant year of achievement, I think, by everybody, including yourselves supporting the staff, and your range of policy endorsements and advocacy and resource allocations throughout that year. So there's a lot of reading material in there, Mayor and councillors. We are required to adopt it in accordance with Section 134 of the Local Government Act 89 and 20, so we are in transition of the two acts, so it's a bit confusing sometimes, but that's the recommendation, and so that's really commended and will be put on our website and made available to the general public. So happy to take questions, Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Ledden. Do we have any questions, councillors, on item 7, annual report? No questions. I'll seek a mover, please. Councillor Foster has moved, seconded by Councillor Gleeson. Councillor Foster as the mover.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I have a lot of pleasure in moving this. As Mr. Ledden has said, it is our report card to the community, and I commend this to the community to have a good read. I think local government often cops a bit of stick, and I think that's because we are so close to the community of all the tiers of government. So it's terrific to see all of the achievements of both the past council term and the beginnings of this one laid out in this one document. And I'd particularly like to note the fact that despite COVID, which we've talked about a lot, and we've talked about supporting all of our other businesses, but all the while we've kept going as business as usual as well, keeping those services up, keeping them delivered, and then managed to deliver $22 million in projects. So I think this is a celebration of sorts, and I'd like to congratulate all 300 of our staff and the leadership of the council and the executive team. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Foster. Councillor Gleeson.
Thank you. Just to reiterate Councillor Foster's comments, the Mayor CEO statement at the start is just a good read. It's a good news story. It's a reflection of how well everyone has participated and worked hard throughout the COVID period. So in uncharted times, the fact that Mr. Millard's been able to lead a council without making anyone redundant, without losing any staff, an absolute credit to yourself, to the CEO, and it's just, as I say, a report card, so I'd recommend that everybody has a look at it.
Thank you, Councillor Gleeson. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Yes, Councillor Lockett, go ahead.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I agree with both comments thus far, and I'd like to highlight it. Yeah, in the middle of a pandemic, I go back to it quite often, but the daycare service and the service there throughout the pandemic has been absolutely second to none. It's been phenomenal. Also, planning. Everyone's been sitting at home going, well, we can't go to Bali, we can't go overseas, let's build a deck. I did one myself. Well, how do you do that? Like, let's paint the house. So planning department have been absolutely under the pump, and they've been doing, a really good job at keeping up. And, the planning department often get, hounded for, they are under the pump and are doing an excellent job under the leadership of Mr. Davies. I think they should really be congratulated in that department. Also, roads, I think we're making some really good progress with our road network. And also, we've got fire prevention coming up, wind farm projects. There's a lot on our plate. And yeah, again, congratulating Mr. Millard and the team on the fantastic work they've done thus far.
Thanks, Councillor Lockett. Any other councillors wishing to speak to the motion? Okay, Councillor Foster is the mover.
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you. Voting on item 7, councillors, all those in favour? Motion's carried 7-0. Moving on to item 8, which is council delegations to the Chief Executive Officer. Mr Ledden.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. So this report is fairly straightforward and procedural. From time to time we need and are required to update all of our various delegations, whether they be from council to staff, council to the CEO or CEO to staff. This one is around the council delegation to the Chief Executive Officer, and it's more about what the Chief Executive Officer can't do that he can do. And this was last reviewed last year, and it's due for review again. This time around there's no content changes, they are purely date changes. So things like authorisation to procurement up to 300,000, etc., etc., all remain in place. And last year, the new Local Government Act requirements were incorporated in this delegation, so the CEO can't approve an acting CEO for more than 28 days, etc., or change the government rules, etc., etc. So this one, there are only date changes in this delegation, and so the recommendation is that this updated version be adopted, essentially. Happy to take questions, Mayor.
Thanks, Mr Ledden. Any questions, councillors? Okay. Yeah, Councillor Dukas has a question.
Thank you. Yeah, under conditions and limitations, the 300,000 GST inclusive, is that $300,000 project or a contract that's not the lowest tender, or is it a $300,000 project that isn't the lowest tender?
Through you, Mayor, I think I got most of that, but it is a contract, so we go to tender, and if it's less than $300,000, it can be awarded by the CEO under delegation, otherwise it goes to council. But we follow the normal tender process, whether it goes to council or not, in terms of going to market, evaluating, recommending on criteria.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, mover please. Councillor Gleeson has moved, seconding Councillor Foster. Councillor Gleeson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. It's an LGA requirement. There's nothing changed except the date, so it's something we have to do, so let's tick it off.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
No need for any further comment, thank you.
Thanks. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Okay, Councillor Gleeson is the mover.
No need.
Councillors voting on item 8, all those in favour? That motion is carried 7-0. We'll now move on to item 9, which is the 2021-2022 Community Grants Program, the Community Assistance Fund Round 2. And we'll ask Mr Ledden and Councillor Foster to vacate the room as they've declared a conflict of interest at the start of the meeting. They've now left, so we can proceed. I'll ask Mr Millard to introduce, please.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. This is obviously round 2 of the Community Assistance Fund. There was approximately $80,000 at the conclusion of the first round. Our intention was to go and run that again through a second round process. Good to see there's a spread of applications right across the municipality, and I think the applications reflect the good results that we'll get as a result, and multiple time return on the amount of money we invest through in-kind and support from clubs and organisations. So happy to take a question, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr Millard? Okay, I'll have a mover, please. Councillor Dukas has moved. Councillor Purcell seconded. Councillor Dukas as the mover.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. A long time grant process that we've had at the Moyne Shire. I think we'd be one of the first shires in the state that came up with this type of grant process, or grant assistance to community groups. It's good to see that we have a little bit of money left over to do have a second round. And as you know, from the first and second round applications, there's a lot of good work going out there in the community. So the Moyne Shire should congratulate itself that it does have a community that gets off its backside and has a real go. And just to see the way that the applications come in and the money that they receive is a testament to the work that the officers do and the community does in conjunction with those officers. So it's a real good project, and well done to all concerned.
Thanks, councillor Dugas. Councillor Purcell, a seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. Look, I would echo the remarks of Councillor Dukas. It is a great fund. It provides a lot of community groups with funding for projects that they feel and we feel are important. There has become an increasing number of opportunities for funding throughout the Shire with the number of renewable energy funds and philanthropic trusts, and it may be time where we had a good look at combining some of these and working together to have a bigger pool. But certainly this project, and as Councillor Dukas said, it's one that the council started probably a decade or more ago, and a great one, funded a heap of excellent projects within the community, and it may be time to sort of try and expand that a little bit into other areas as well, but certainly more than happy to second this motion.
Thank you, councillor Purcell. Other councillors wishing to speak to the motion? Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. It's one of my favourite things that we do at council is the community grants program, and the breadth across the Shire. One, it's all across the Shire, but if you look at, there's a hearing loop system for hearing impaired people at a theatre company. There's pistol shooting club, there's lawnmowers, there's just a real breadth of things that really help the community to flourish across our Shire. So I always really get excited about this program. So thank you, Mayor. Acting Mayor.
Thanks, councillor Lockett. Any other councillor? Yes, councillor Smith.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Yeah, look, I'd just like to commend the project and the applicants that applied and received the money. There was an interesting one, the one from the Great South Coast Leadership Group, requested funding to trial the All Abilities swimming, which I think was a great effort for the Great South Coast Leadership Group to embark on that, and hopefully the demonstration and the hiring of equipment will go ahead, and it will help people access the beach. So good on them.
Thank you, councillor Smith. I'll just quickly add that, as mentioned by Mr Miller, who introduced the item, I've just made a little bit of a list there from Garvock to Karamat, Macarthur, Hawkesdale, Panmure, Yambuk, Orford, Naranda, right across the Shire. Not even in our three major towns, but beyond that, gets a really good spread of funding. So it is a great program, and it's a pleasure to also support this. Councillor Dukas as the mover.
No need, Mr Acting Mayor.
Okay, voting on item 9, councillors, all those in favour? That motion is carried 6-0. We will now ask Mr Ledden and Councillor Foster to return to the room. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 10 now, which is the Croydon Streetscape Plan, introduced by Mr Ledden. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Councillors, I think this is a really exciting project and also report. As you're aware, and we've had Councillors Foster and Purcell on the Streetscape Committee, but in concert with the Local Progress Association, the Irish Festival, what this report presents is that some detail around the overall project for the revitalisation of the central part of Croydon. The report sets out major works around pavement improvements, streetscape improvements, undergrounding of power, staging on the village green. So in total, we're talking around about $5 million for all of those works. What this report is about, Council adopting it, the plan and as a priority project, and about advocating for funding to complete the works. As Council is aware, it has allocated around $1 million for the first pieces of those works to be completed. Council's listened to the Progress Association and priorities, and at this point in time, the northern pavement works will be #1 priority. There is an opportunity to fund the staging at the village green out of the outdoor activation funding, which would accelerate that project, and then the undergrounding power at the crossover points, I think there's about 8 of them, may also be able to be funded out of part 1, if you like. The remaining works, the south side, the other streetscape works, etc., we still need funding for. So what this report does is elevates this project as a priority project of council. Council will be advocating for the balance of the funding to complete all of the works. As I said, it's a pretty exciting project for Koroit. So Mayor, there's a lot of detail in the attachments setting out the works themselves, but the summary of that is in the recommendation is that council adopt the plan and as a priority project and advocate for funding there. So happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ledden. Any questions, councillors, firstly? Yes? No? Okay, thanks. I'll seek a mover, please. Councillor Foster's moved. Councillor Purcell seconded. Councillor Foster to speak to the motion, please.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. This is a really exciting project. It's been a long time in the making and lots of community feedback and input along the way. As Mr. Ledden said, the Koroit and District Progress Association has been very clear about its top priorities within the plan. I'm sure all of my colleagues here today would love to be able to be in a position to fund this in its entirety. We can't just yet, but it's significant that this is escalated to the status of a priority project for council, because it means that that hard work can then start. We can get on with doing that, advocating to other tiers of government to see that project through. I note that there have been more than 200 responses to the draft plan alone, so I'm really confident that this now represents what the Koroit community really wants, and let's get on with the business of doing it. Really exciting. It's Koroit's turn, it's Koroit's time. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Foster. Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Yes, it's Councillor Foster and I sit on with this committee, and I think it's fair to say that they certainly are enthusiastic in their efforts to bring this to our attention, and they're a great committee to work with. I can assure you, because they're never going to sit on their hands and let any water pass under the bridge without them being involved. We have had a presentation from the Progress Association, which helped us understand where the association's coming from, and from that we've been able to develop this as another priority project for council, and to go from there to be able to work and advocate as well as we can for more funding for this. But as I say, they're a great group to work with, and it's been a pleasure to be involved with them. So I have no hesitation in seconding this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Any other councillors would like to speak to the motion? Yes, Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I agree with the comments thus far by Councillor Foster and Purcell. It is Koroit's time, and it's fantastic to see, and I think it's going to be great that it's coinciding with the redevelopment of IGA, because that already looks fantastic. So yeah, really happy to see this one come up, and hopefully we can do our best with advocating to get more funds to hopefully get it all done as quick as we can in an ideal world. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Lockett. Any other councillor? Yes, Councillor Gleeson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. A project such as this has been really community driven, and so just to comment, you know, council's job is to advocate to try and find another $3.5 million to make the project complete, but I'd really encourage the community of Koroit to really kickstart their little campaign and what they can help with. You know, a community fund that maybe that they could have some ownership of the trees and the fittings along the street or something. So I would just really encourage the community of Koroit to look at their own contributions so that they can actually have a bit of an ownership of it as well. But certainly as a priority to the council, you know, we'll be doing everything we can to find that $3.5 million to get the project complete.
Thank you, Councillor Gleeson. Any other councillor wishing to speak to the motion? No? Okay. Councillor Foster is the mover. Thanks.
I don't think there's a need for anything further.
All right. Thank you. Councillors voting on item 10. All those in favour? That motion is carried 7-0. Moving on to item 11, which is the Hawkesdale and Ryan Corner Wind Farm Amendment. We ask Mr Davis to leave the room as he's declared a conflict of interest earlier on in the meeting. So we'll ask The Manager for Energy Projects, Ms Michelle Granger, to introduce this one. Thanks.
Thanks, Acting Mayor. Councillors, we've got 2 applications that are currently to amend planning permits for wind farms at Hawkesdale and Ryan Corner. The applications aren't with Council, they're with the Minister for Planning, who makes decisions on wind farms. Council is a stakeholder in this process, and we have a policy that says when we've got an application in front of the Minister for Planning, we should ask our community for submissions that they may have, so that when we make a submission, we do so in 2 parts. One, giving some technical and lived experience as part of our submission, and the second part, advocating on issues our community has with these projects. The key elements, we received 16 submissions from Hawkesdale and 2 submissions from Ryan Corner as part of this process, so thank you very much to those submitters. For the Ryan Corner wind farm, the key amendments are to reduce the number of turbines by 4, so that will go from 56 down to 52, increase the size of the construction compound, increase the amount of native vegetation to be removed, and they're seeking to remove a condition which requires landscaping of their industrial substations. They're also looking at changing aviation lighting requirements, so all of the outer turbines would be aviation lit, so it's a steady red light of low intensity on top of 22 of the 52 turbines. The report and the draft submission you have before you recommends that Council should object to the increased removal of vegetation, that we should object to the removal of the requirement to landscape the substation. I believe it can be done in a way that doesn't increase fire risk but also protects our rural amenity. And we should be encouraging the Minister to modify the noise conditions now that EPA is primarily responsible for noise, and not have to go through a separate amendment process. In the case of Hawkesdale, the amendment application seeks to reduce the number of turbines by 3, but disappointingly it's seeking to remove the 3 smallest turbines and not the 3 turbines closest to the Hawkesdale community, where we need to protect the amenity and ensure the town can grow. So I think we should be strongly pushing that it's fine to remove 3 turbines, but we object to the 3 they want, and we actually nominate the 3 closest to the town to be removed, and that's outlined in the draft submission. They are also looking at changing aviation lighting. In this case, with not as many turbines, only 5 of the turbines won't be lit. Again, the same issue on noise conditions. We believe fix it up now rather than put us and the community through another process. So you've got a detailed report in front of you with draft submissions attached, which we'd like to submit to the Minister for Planning.
Thank you, Ms Granger. Any questions, councillors, firstly? Yes, Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Ms Granger, I think it'd be worthwhile if you could just, on the first page, the last paragraph, where it says council consideration of the amendment application is limited to, if you could just sort of explain that, that it's not really whether the wind farm should exist or not. So if you could just take us through to what we are actually submitting to.
Yeah, so the matters that we can provide feedback to the Minister are limited. So irrespective of whether this amendment application succeeds or fails, there is still a valid permit to construct each of the wind farms. So it's really what impacts are there on planning and land use? What changes have there been to the planning scheme that might reflect these changes? And are there going to be greater amenity packs as a result of the amendments?
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Gleeson.
Thanks, Acting Mayor. Ms Granger, just a clarification on the noise. The proponent is suggesting that we don't worry about noise until it's built. We're actually saying, hang on, Minister, you should act now on that.
Yeah, because these are permits that were issued some time ago, the noise conditions cover both the operational and the construction phase and the background noise assessment. Council's no longer responsible for noise once the wind farm is operational, and we'd like to see those conditions amended to make sure that responsibility goes to the EPA now, rather than go through another amendment process.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Yes, councillor Dugas.
Thank you to you, Acting Mayor. I note that in both submissions, they talk about the general environmental duty, which is something that's creeped into the wind farm situation. Can you tell me, or can anybody tell me what our environmental duties are?
Ms Granger, were you able to pick that one up?
Briefly, the general environmental duty has been created under the new Environment Protection Act. It applies to the permit holders and a range of authorities to ensure that there is no undue harm to health or the environment.
Okay, thank you. Further questions, councillor Dugas?
Yeah, thanks. So if a person has an issue with harm, whatever it might be, do they go straight to the EPA or do they come to the council first?
Ms Granger.
If it's a noise-related issue, we would be directing the complainant to the EPA first, but in all cases where there are complaints about wind farms, where there are planning permits, the planning permits build in a complaints management process which encourages people to first go to the company before going to an authority.
Right, okay, that clears that up, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, I'll seek a mover for item 11, please. Councillor Gleeson has moved. Councillor Purcell seconded. Councillor Gleeson as the mover.
Thanks, Acting Mayor. I'm very pleased that we advocate and listen carefully to the concerns of the people that are affected by these things, and I think we've done a really good job of that over the last 12 months. It's important that we really push that the removal of the 3 turbines closest to Hawkesdale. That'll be a great outcome for the community there. Keeping in mind that we're trying to influence the minister, we can't really change the plannings, but I think it's good work on your behalf, Ms Granger, and I appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thanks, councillor Gleeson. Councillor Purcell, seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. Look, I congratulate Ms Granger on this. I think it's a well-balanced argument that the submission is. But we do need to realise that this isn't about the existence of the wind farm. This is about the amendments that are applied for or to be considered. So it isn't one that we can argue a case about the wind farm being there or not. It's really in regard to the amendment. So congratulate Ms Granger on the submission she has prepared.
Thank you, councillor Purcell. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Okay, councillor Gleeson is the mover.
I need, Mr Mayor.
Okay, councillors voting on item 11. All those in favour? That motion is carried 7-0. Councillors now move on to item 12. We'll invite Mr Davis back into the room. Item 12 is the Rivers Run Estate 169A and 183 Princess Highway Port Fairy combined planning scheme amendment and permit application to be introduced by the Economic Development and Planning Director, Mr Brett Davis.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So this report outlines a combined planning scheme amendment and planning application process for what's known as the Rivers Run Estate, located at 169A to 183 Princess Highway Port Fairy. For this to proceed, Council must request procedurally that the Minister for Planning grant authorisation to prepare and exhibit the proposal. Some key elements of the proposal is the request is to rezone the land from farming zone to the neighbourhood residential zone, apply a development plan overlay to outline controls for future development, have an application for a planning permit to be considered concurrently, which enables earthworks to be undertaken, subdivide the land into 75 lots, and also to have a singular lot with 10 dwellings on the lot proposed. So in total, 85 dwellings. Council officers have assessed the revised application and consider at this stage there is sufficient justification to undertake the process of preparing and exhibiting this amendment to the mine planning scheme. Its now working title is Amendment C75. A couple of comments to add to that process. You'd be aware of clearly Amendment C69, which is set for further consultation at this stage, where it recommends the site be applied a rural conservation zone, although it does indicate that there's potential for residential development on this land that relates to C75, subject to the resolution of flooding and buffer issues. Council officers have been working with the proponent for several months around that factor, where they have now produced enough information for it to proceed to the next stage. What does that mean in simple terms? That means that council is approving a step in a process, and it's a process that undertakes numerous steps. The next one would be that council would prepare a planning scheme amendment, and they would go publicly to public consultation to take and receive feedback from the community. That is anticipated to occur over the next several months, by which time, once that process occurs, we go back to the council to review the submissions. Council gives the officers direction on which way they want to take it, and should it go a certain way, it would proceed then to a planning panel, an independent planning panel appointed by the Minister to hear submissions made on this proposal. It is envisaged that this would then align with the C69 timing, so we would have consecutive hearings in the early part of 2022 in and around sort of April, May, where we would hear the Port Fairy Structure Plan, and then we would also hear the Rivers Run application that's before you today. That's the reasoning behind the timing and that process. Overall, the amendment is expected to provide an orderly and planning outcome which facilitates the development of an underutilised parcel of land on the northern edge of Port Fairy. Clearly, we have to go through our open process of public consultation to ascertain the ins and outs of what that will look like ultimately. I commend the report to Council to consider.
Thank you, Mr Davis. We have a question straight off the bat from Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. So would there be two panels? I know you said they would be at the same time. So they wouldn't be the same panel, or would they be two or one panel?
Through you, Acting Mayor, they would be two panels, but we would be attempting to request that they be the same panel members for consistency. We're just trying to sort of bring them in together at the same time. So, for instance, let's say week 1 was C69, week 2 would be C75. You'd still have separate reports, but you'd have a level of consistency with the panel members.
Yeah, follow up there?
Certainly makes sense. And the people who have already made submissions to C69, you would recommend that they actually make submissions again to C75?
Through you, Mayor, very good question, Councillor Purcell. Yes, they would need to make separate submission on this particular matter if they had issues they wanted to raise with council officers.
Thank you.
Other questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Just a clarification, which is probably more for people who are listening who may be a little bit confused. We've had the benefit of a workshop with some detail behind this, but just to clarify, this recommendation is effectively silent on the merits or otherwise of the development. This is really a decision today to rezone, or to begin the process of applying to rezone the land. And the community will have, if this goes ahead, the community will have ample time for input into the actual development. Is that correct?
Through you, Acting Mayor, that is correct, Councillor Foster. It's akin to a planning application that might arise in your street that you've had no awareness of, and all of a sudden there's a sign on site and then you're invited to make submission. It's a very similar process in that regard. The background to this is because it's a rezoning, there has been some work with council and council officers in the background to get it to a point whereby it's got the necessary documentation to then be tested in a public forum. This council by no means today is endorsing any proposal. They're endorsing it to go to the Minister to authorise, in a planning sense, to allow us to go to a public process.
Thank you, Mr Davis.
Other questions, councillors? Yes, councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. On that same similar question, the community will be able to be consulted about the rezoning.
Through you, Acting Mayor, that is correct. So once this goes to public exhibition, there will certainly be opportunities where council will run a couple of drop-in sessions for the community where they can make an appointment and come in, and separately, clearly we can have opportunities to take submissions during that period, and we will communicate that when the dates are finalised. At this stage, if council is of a mind to approve this step today, it is then sent to the department for processing, and that can take anywhere between 10 to 20 sort of business days. And in that meantime, we will gear up to have a public exhibition campaign.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Yes, councillor Gleeson.
Thanks, Acting Mayor. Mr Davis, so this is step one. How many steps do we have to go through?
Through you, Mayor. There can be as many as 10 to 11 steps, Councillor Gleeson. I would say we're probably at around step 3 now. So we've already jumped a couple of steps. I might have said step 1 earlier.
So step
but
1 here.
There has been a lot of work by the proponent from their initial information to where we go to this point. So from here, authorisation, nominally, let's say that's granted, then there's a public exhibition process, then council has the opportunity to hear from submitters, and then council makes a decision whether or not to request the minister to appoint a panel. So it's step in that regard.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, I'll seek a mover for the motion, please. Councillor Foster has moved, seconded by Councillor Dukas. Councillor Foster is the mover.
I think we've had a pretty thorough explanation of all of this, and given that we're not here to debate the merits or otherwise of the actual development, I'm very happy to support that this moves forward to the next step 3, or wherever we're up to, and really keen for this to go to the community now or afterwards for public consultation.
Thank you. Councillor Dukas, the seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. It's great to see that we got to this step 3, as Mr Davis said. And as you know, as you go through the steps, the higher the steps, the quicker you move. So it's starting to pick up a bit of pace, and with a bit of luck, we'll see houses start to get built on this subdivision in the middle of next year.
Thank you, Councillor Dukas. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Yes, Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I know we're not to really comment, but it's hard not to. It's a tricky situation to have another large development in Port Fairy. We've got a housing shortage and a rental crisis. Yet if we chop up paradise enough, it won't be paradise anymore. So I really encourage people to weigh up those when they decide to write their letters in and really think about, you know, the fabric of our town and how we want it to be going forward. We do have these huge, big things to weigh up. What point is enough development? And, you know, where do we want to go? Is it in the right spot? Possibly. So, yeah, I look forward to hearing the feedback from our community. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Lockett. Other councillors wishing to add to the motion? Okay, Councillor Foster is the mover.
Nothing further, thanks, Acting Mayor.
Okay, councillors voting on item 12. All those in favour? Motion is carried 7-0. Item 13 is the Business Facade Improvement Program. I will ask Mr Davis to introduce this again, thanks.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. We received 35 applications for the Business Facade Improvement Program for 21-22. 22 have been considered eligible, having met the program criteria. The allocated funding for this program is oversubscribed by the amount of $32,243 for the eligible applications. The recommendation is that Council approve the eligible applications and allow for a carryover from the previous budget and approve a budget variation of $14,565 to fund the additional 10 eligible applications. In brief, the Business Facade Improvement Program provides an incentive for commercial property owners and or business operators to undertake facade improvements. and works that will improve local streetscapes, encourage capital investment in our towns and support business development. So think of it as a shopfront upgrade scheme, and that's the way it has been assessed in this regard. The key criteria in weighting that aligns to the eligibility criteria of being in the correct zoning, that is a commercial zone, the alignment to the program objective, the delivery of the program, and importantly, also the use of local procurement. For example, if a business has asked for painting and some building works to the front of its property, generally they will then be sourcing the painting and the building works from a Moyne builder and painter. And that has added to the weighting criteria of the successful candidates. The total value of funding requested from all applications is $124,220, and the total value of all projects is $302,000. So council matches on a 1-to-1 bid in this regard up to $5,000. I commend the report to the council for its approval as a business support initiative under council's economic development strategy. Conclude there.
Thank you very much, Mr Davis. Any questions, councillors? All right, I'll seek a mover for the motion, please. Councillor Gleeson has moved. Councillor Foster seconded. Councillor Gleeson is the mover.
Thanks, Acting Mayor. What a terrific project. You know, for all the business that have been involved in it are just thrilled, very, very well received. Been a little bit of confusion about those that do qualify and those that don't. Mr Davis just explained that it was a street facade upgrade, so I think hopefully that'll clear that up a little bit. I'm really impressed with the business-to-business connection. That, you know, we'll support you, you throw some money in, and then we'll go and support local tradies and other people like that. So a great thing. For us to be able to support all the applicants with an extra $14,565, I'm really think we should do that, so I'm pleased to endorse this report.
Thanks, Councillor Gleeson. Councillor Foster.
I just really would like to add that it's pleasing to see a good geographic spread of businesses right across the Shire. And I think this program overall has managed to do that really well. And I love the fact that it's sort of a double win, as Mr Davis has said. So through the local procurement aspect of it, we get extra support for business. So really very happy to support it, and I hope that the successful 10 extra businesses can find the tradies they need really quickly.
Thank you. Any other councillor would like to speak to the motion? Yes, Councillor Dugas.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. Look, I'm fully supportive of the motion, but I'm glad that during discussions that we're going to review the criteria, because everybody in here that's eligible and those that weren't, they're all still ratepayers. But when we have companies that are multi-million-dollar operations, do they really need council funding? I would have thought that when we review the criteria, we should look at, you know, the turnover of some of these buildings. When, without naming any of them, they have high turnover and high profit margins, but they are still ratepayers. And also, if I remember correctly, being the oldest councillor on the block, years ago we had a dairy entrance improvement program, and it might have been partly funded from the state government. So maybe we should look at that, because, you know, the farmers put a lot into the community. Now that some of them are getting bigger, and with B-double, not only milk tankers, but grain trucks and fuel trucks and contractors, etc. And if you listen to some of those in the community, entrances to some of those large operations do have issues. I know that Ms Farrell's new on the job, but if she talked to Leah, she'd find out that there's, you know, a lot of potholes appear where trucks turn off the road. So maybe that's something we can look at in the future. But having said all that, it's still a great project, and I fully endorse it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dugas. Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Agree with the comments said thus far. And just, it's great to see so many shop fronts across the whole Shire looking fantastic. Like it's You can really see it, you know, the streets across the Shire are popping. So, you know, great to see Keynesian economics and stimulus spending also getting a run in the Shire's, you know, way of spending money. And it's, yeah, really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor would like to add? Okay, Councillor Gleeson as a mover.
Just to reiterate that if we have a budget variation, we're going to fund all 22, not 10, as mentioned earlier. So that's a great thing. So no more.
Right. Thanks, Councillor Gleeson. All right, everyone, we're voting on item 13 now. All those in favour? That motion is carried 7-0. Moving on now to item 14, which is submissions regarding amendments to local law number 1-2015. Introduce our Director for Infrastructure and Environment, Ms Edith Farrell. Thanks.
Thank you. So through the Acting Mayor, so this report relates back to a resolution Council made earlier in the year to seek comment on a proposal to amend local law number 1, specifically around toy vehicles and dogs in Sackville and Bank Street in Port Fairy over certain periods of time across the year. There's been substantial feedback to the submission process, so close to 500 submissions on the dog component and 40 on the toy vehicles, with a combined petition of just over 1,400 signatures, as well as a joint letter speaking on the matter. There's been a really diverse range of views provided, but the majority of those are not in favour of amendments to the local law. However, it's been a really positive report to receive in terms of some of the outcomes or some of the issues that have been highlighted in the report that we can now take forward to bring some attention to in terms of some of the safety concerns and congestion around the retail area in Port Fairy. So officers are intending to bring, at the request of Council, a further report to Council in the future on that matter and what we can do in relation to the congestion. But at this point in time, the recommendation is that Council do not proceed with an amendment to the local law.
Thanks, Ms Farrell. Any questions, councillors? Okay, I'll have a mover, please. Councillor Lockett has moved, seconded by Councillor Foster. Councillor Lockett to speak to the motion, please.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I wish to speak very strongly in favour of the recommendation to not proceed. I was very vocal about the proposal when it came up at April meeting. However, there have been some fantastic suggestions made. I wasn't to deny that there wasn't any issues with skateboards and dogs and people trying to do kickflips out the front of IGA and various things like that. It is a bit of a problem, particularly, you know, with COVID. Obviously the many shop fronts have moved out onto the street, so, you know, even in the middle of winter we've got congestion. You've got, you know, I've got a pram with 2 kids in it, takes up half the footpath, and then you've got a table, then you've got a dog, it's all happening. So with the busiest summer just gone as well, you know, it was all happening down the street. And I think as locals we kind of knew what spots and hot spots to kind of, probably not a good phrase to use in the middle of a pandemic, what spots to avoid with dogs and bikes and scooters and things. So I think the education which will come out of this moving forward will be fantastic for the people that don't know. But in terms of why we should not proceed, there's 2,692 registered dogs in the Shire, so we have to think of them. They're not ratepayers, but the people that look after them are ratepayers. It's a simple basic right, I think, to be able to walk down the street with your dog or with your little kids on the scooters. I've had many mums and dads that look after their kids, me being one of them. It helps you transport your children down the street, because otherwise you have to carry them home, and that's really hard work. The damage to the tourism of the town, we've all been swamped with emails. Many people have said they will simply not come back to Port Fairy if they can't bring their dog there. The whole, you know, but both our caravan parks are dog friendly, and that's, you know, maybe that's something we can look at if we have a cap on dogs if we need to. the mental health and well-being of people just being able to simply take their dog, down the street and get a pie or go for a, safe scooter whereby with COVID restrictions the last 2 years, I think the last thing we need in Port Fairy is more restrictions. Port Fairy was the most livable community in 2012. I think this would act very poorly on that. I could go on and on and on, but I think the document and the community feedback that we've got really speaks for itself. So I seek support of councillors to not proceed with it.
Thank you, Councillor Lockett. Councillor Foster, a seconder.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I think from the outset I felt that this was a well-intentioned but perhaps flawed response to a couple of isolated incidents. And I think it's been a really good process to go through. Even though I was against this at the beginning, I think it's been a good process. It's helped people engage with local government in different ways they might not have done before. But I also think we've heard some really constructive ideas around how we can make living with dogs and toy scooters much easier and safer. So I'm really heartened to hear Ms Farrell say that officers are going through all of those submissions in detail to take on board what, what's workable, what changes we can make to make it safer. That's a really exciting thing. But on sheer weight of numbers, I think we can't go out to the public and ask for their opinion and then say, well, actually, we don't agree with you. So this is a very clear result. It's not 50-50. It's a pretty strong result. So I think we don't really have much of a choice in this matter. Is my personal view. So I think it's great. I'd like to thank all of the people who did take the time to make submissions, and particularly the ones who did make that constructive feedback. I think it would be very difficult to police and put. I don't know how that would work. And I just think that one of Port Fairy's most wonderful aspects is its walkability, and anything that we do to restrict that, I think, is a really bad thing. So I'm hopeful that we'll go with the majority here and vote with the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Any other councillor wishing to speak to the motion? Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I through my time on council, this has been the most discussed topic of any by far. Submissions, walking down the street, you hear people talking. I was in Torquay the other day having a coffee, and the people next to me from Geelong were talking about the dogs in the street, and half of them were for, half of them were against. I've heard all of the arguments for, I've heard all of the arguments against many times. Many times. But for me, this started out of safety, and for me it'll finish out of safety, so I can't support it. Safety is paramount for me. Yet we could lose some tourists. There's a huge number of locals who really think we should do something, a huge number of locals. These sort of things you never get right. But as I said, it's really been a good process. We've opened it up, we've had discussions, it's been in the paper in the UK, it's been on national radio, national television. As I said, it's by far the biggest. I don't think there is a right or a wrong in it, but for me, I will take safety over the rest, and I can't support the recommendation, the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Any other councillors wishing to speak to the motion? Yes, Councillor Gleeson.
I can commend Councillor Purcell for bringing it to council, because there was a legitimate concern, and it's important that we listen to those legitimate concerns. And I'm pleased that Ms Farrell has said that council will be working to address those concerns and look at what we can do. Last summer was a summer like no other. There was 1 million Victorians holidayed in Victoria because they couldn't go anywhere else. And so we had increased incidents with vandalism and, rubbish and a lot of other things, And so there were concerns, and it's the people's right to raise those. And, particularly the elderly, we have an elderly population, and they have legitimate concerns, and I think that we'd be negligent if we don't address those. I've loved the whole education of this. Everybody's had their say, and I'm going to support the motion, let me say. But be on notice, people. Be responsible parents. Be responsible dog owners. We confuse rights with privileges. It's an absolute privilege to be able to walk your kids down the street and take your dog and all those sort of things. But it's not a right. You know, over summer we accept that dogs on beaches are issues. So from 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, as does most of the coastal shires, we have restrictions. So this has been a terrific process for me. And I'm saying that, okay, we're going to take it off the table at the minute, but, you know, it's created such discussion and such awareness that I'd be really disappointed if we had a lot of incidents this summer. Because people should, locals included, need to be aware of the congestion in the streets. And then hopefully we can sit back in February and say, what a great summer we had. No incidences, no safety concerns. It's created an awareness that let's be a little bit more respectful to the elderly people who are on gophers, who are trying to get in and out of the news agents. That, you know, we've got our dog tied up. Let's understand that it's a tripping hazard. So it's just been such a great thing as far as everybody having their say. This will be a great summer to sit back and just evaluate. Because I would say to people, yes, we're going to take a deep breath and have a bit of a look, but you're on notice. You know, you've told us what you think should happen. We've got lots and lots of concerns. So why don't we just show a lot of consideration for each other, and let's get through summer, and let's hopefully reassess and, you know, move forward. But gee, it's been a great process. So well done, Councillor Purcell.
Thanks, Councillor Gleeson. Any other councillor would like to add to the motion? Yes, Councillor Smith.
Look, I'll just be brief, Mr Acting Mayor. Look, I think it's a good outcome because the issues have been raised and has given residents and visitors an opportunity to respond to it. Even up in the northern part of the Shire, several people have discussed it with me, and yeah, so look, I think it's a positive outcome, and everybody is basically on notice that the Shire expects proper behaviour from people with their dogs and toy children. So I think it's just not children, sorry, toy dogs, they're toy. Anyway, it's a good outcome. So I'd like to commend the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Any other speakers, councillors? All right, Councillor Lockett as the mover.
Sorry, I'm still gathering myself. Well, I've got kids and they love toys, so it's not that far. Thank you. I agree with some comments thus far. I'd just like to highlight and remind Councillor Purcell he's also a dog owner. And I'd like to, and he's got grandchildren, I believe, that use scooters and bikes also.
Absolutely.
I'd just like to argue the points that I didn't agree with regarding Councillor Gleeson saying that it's not a right to walk down the street. The Charter of Human Rights says that humans have a freedom of movement. So just wanted to highlight, I definitely think it is a right to be able to whip down to the bakery and get a loaf of bread with your kids, whether you've got a, you know, Shih Tzu or a skateboarder or whatever. But the education process throughout this has been phenomenal and we're going to learn from it. Let's hope it's policed like double lines are in Port Fairy, because I tell you what, there's many cops on the beat with that one. So if we just all look after each other a bit, which I think we do, we're a strong, resilient community in Port Fairy, also across the whole Shire, look out for each other. Thank you, Mayor. Mr Mayor, Mr
Thanks.
Acting Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Lockett. Okay, councillors, voting now on item 14. All those in favour? Councillor Foster, Smith, Gleeson, Lockett, Mead and Dukas in favour. Those against? Councillor Purcell against. The motion is carried 6-1. Okay, thank you. Moving now on to item 15, which is the Old Yambuk Child and Infant Welfare Centre land sale via expression of interest. Ms Farrell, thanks.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So this report, the subject of this is in relation to a now disused maternal and child health centre in Yambuk that Council have before them to consider selling. There's been an expression of interest process undertaken to gauge interest in the building. It's a late 1970s building in a township zone disused for quite a period of time now. There have been a number of previous expressions of interest for this building with no interest. So this time round there is someone who is interested in purchasing the building, and for the purpose of transparency it is below the preset market rate. So there is a public process to go through to inform the community of that, should council support the recommendation. The offer is an unconditional offer to purchase, so basically the report is seeking to reaffirm with council that the site is surplus to need, and I won't read the other recommendations in detail, but basically go through a process of approving the site for sale.
Thanks, Ms Farrell. Do you have any questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Gleeson.
Just one for clarification, and maybe Mr Davis might like to respond. It's a very, very small lot. What are some of the uses that you might be able to put towards a lot that size?
Through you, Mayor, Acting Mayor, there could be a number of sites there. You know, whether or not they're viable commercially is probably a question that I can't answer, but it could vary from a consulting room, an office, a coffee shop. It's zoned a township zone, so there are a suite of options there, but obviously the location and passing traffic and all those other things would have to come into play.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Yes, another question, Councillor Gleeson.
Sorry, Mr Acting Mayor, just a point of clarification to Ms Farrell then. So we're suggesting that we're not going to quite get market value or what we think. Just an explanation as to why we should move forward, perhaps, you know, other costs that we may incur.
Yes, so through the Acting Mayor, obviously every time we go out for an expression of interest process, there are fees associated with that. There are also the holding costs in terms of the building, ongoing issues surrounding maintenance and so forth. So it really becomes a bit of a numbers game as to whether it's viable to have a disused building sitting there deteriorating.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I'll seek a mover for the motion, please. Councillor Smith has moved. Have a seconder, please. Councillor Gleeson has seconded. Councillor Smith is the mover.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. Ever since I've been on council, this block of land has been talked about. So the land's located in Lindsay Street, Yambuck, formerly an infant welfare site. There's been several attempts to sell it in the past, and I think this is the first time we've had a substantial offer on it. Even though it may be low what we anticipated, I think we've just got to move on with this. And yeah, look, I'd just like to move the officer's recommendation that we proceed with the sale of the land. And a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, I think, and it's been sitting there for quite a while. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Excellent saying. Councillor Gleeson as a seconder.
I'd just like to endorse Councillor Smith's comments. It's excess, we don't need it. Let's get rid of it and get rid of the vaccination records of Mr Ledden.
Very good. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Yes, Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support the motion. Just reading through it, though, look, it's a tiny site, it's 60 square metres, and looking at the comparable properties for the valuations, it'd be very, very difficult to put a value on this, because even though the valuer has done an excellent job in going through a number of properties, there's certainly nothing that is nearly equivalent even. So I think you could be well out in your valuation just because of the ability to put a figure on a comparative value on a comparative property. So, as I said, it is less than the valuation, but I still think, as I said, I think that may be because of the difficulty in putting a value on it rather than the actual worth of it.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Purcell. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? All right, Councillor Smith is the mover.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. Nothing further to add except that we proceed with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Okay, councillors voting on item 15. All those in favour? That motion is carried 7-0. Item 16, which is the Cattle Underpasses Policy Review. Thanks, Ms Farrell.
Thank you. So through the Acting Mayor, this report is a refresh of our cattle underpass policy. It's required to be reviewed every 4 years, and in essence, the review has really just addressed a few minor issues in the policy to amend the policy and the application form associated with the policy in relation to the fact that the state government, through RDV, no longer fund the cattle underpass grant program that they previously had, so that scheme was withdrawn. So this report and policy just reflect those changes.
Thanks, Ms Farrell. Any questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Gleeson.
In light of the RDV funding withdrawal, we're advocating, aren't we, for a reinstatement of that funding?
Yes, question for Ms Farrell. Yep.
Yes, so through the Acting Mayor, we have very recently written to the appropriate minister, shadow minister, and also provided copies of our letter of advocacy to the VFF and to local members to seek for that grant process to be reinstated.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? All right, I'll seek a mover for the motion. Yes, Councillor Smith is the mover, seconded by Councillor, who we got? Councillor Lockett. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. Look, this is basically a 4-yearly review of the policy. Look, I think it's a great policy to have the underpass review in the cattle or livestock underpass reviewed. It's a good outcome for the farmers. It improves safety and also stops damage to our roads. So I think we have to review the policy, and I recommend it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Really good policy, and it's been a really good policy that's served us well over the last few years, and I think you're one of the ones that helped get it underway. So yeah, as Councillor Smith said, it improves safety and helps out the farmers, so keep it going.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Lockett. Any other councillor would like to speak to the motion? No, all good. Councillor Smith is the mover.
Nothing further to add, thanks, Acting Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, councillors voting on item 16, all in favour? That motion is carried 7-0. Related one, so item 17 is the cattle underpass funding applications. Thanks, Ms Farrell.
Thank you. So through the Acting Mayor, Moyne Shire Council itself does have a funding scheme to support farmers, and that scheme provides up to $10,000 per application for any farmer seeking to undertake the infrastructure development of an underpass. There are 2 applications within this report seeking an allocation of $10,000 each from our pool of funding, and it's related to that policy just discussed.
Thanks, Ms Farrell. Any questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Gleeson.
There's 2 applications, which is fantastic. Have we used that 50,000 in the past, or?
Yeah, I can help you there, Ms Farrell. Yes, we have exhausted that 50,000 before in our financial year. So certainly when the other grants were available, it was popular. So
just 2 points. So absolutely, because we've got 2 applications, but you know, in light of some earlier concerns about projects and programs that we do run that mightn't be supporting all of the Shire, you know, these certainly are supporting our farmers and our rural residents. So yeah, absolutely happy to, you know, great, good stuff.
Thanks, Councillor Gleeson. Okay, any other questions? All right, seek a mover, please. Councillor Purcell's moved. Councillor Smith, the seconded. Councillor Purcell's the mover.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Look, I think most of this has been said in the previous motion. These are 2 good applications, and we should support them.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. Look, these projects are becoming very expensive for the landholders to embark on, and I think any assistance from the council may help in improving road safety and safety of the council assets. So definitely in support of supporting the two applications for funding.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any other councillor would like to speak to the motion? All right. Councillor Purcell's the mover.
No need, Acting Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, councillors. We'll now vote on item 17, the Cattle Underpass funding application. All those in favour? That motion is carried 7-0. Okay, item 18, which is the Council Community Carbon Offset Program and the allocations for 2021. Ms Farrell again, thanks.
Thank you. So through the Acting Mayor, the content of this report is in relation to another council scheme, which is to support the sequester of carbon offset related to our light fleet vehicle emissions. And so through this process, we have both a public and a private fund, which is allocating money for people to undertake tree planting. This report deals with the public component of that program, so we have a $10,000 allocation annually, and we have had 6 submissions to that program. Those submitters are listed in the report, so the report is recommending that we allocate funds accordingly to those groups, but also we've actually had an under subscription to the program. So what the report is also proposing is that we redirect the balance of those funds to the Basalt to Bay Land Care Network for them to undertake an allocation process in the private component of the fund, so that we actually meet our targets for this year, and that that the network undertake that and provide the recommendations back to council for both that and the private land component into the future.
Thanks, Ms Farrell. Any questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, just in regard to the balance of the funds, do you have any idea why that was under, allocated or requirements?
Through the Acting Mayor, not really, no. I mean, it was well publicised and it was out, publicly advertised for quite some period of time, but we just haven't had to take up. I can investigate that further and provide additional report.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Dugas.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Could Ms Farrell tell me who determines or who calculates how many trees we need to plant to cover the carbon offset?
Through the Acting Mayor, I'll need to take that question on notice, Councillor Dukas, but we do have an environmental officer, and I imagine that they would actually have a look at some industry formulas that would be available, but I'll get some detailed response for you.
Yeah, that'd be great, thank you, because if my memory serves me right, these are small seedlings that we offer to people to plant, and naturally they grow. Now, the Shire doesn't get any bigger, and I don't think we do any more kilometres. Our vehicles are pretty new, so they become more efficient. It would be interesting to see how it's all calculated from a 6-inch tubing up to a 25-metre tree.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Dugas. Ms Farrell will take that on notice and come back to us.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Gleeson.
Thanks, Acting Mayor. Just a comment, if I may. We're very conscious of our community offset, and I get that, but I'd like this to be a part of our bigger discussion on the contribution that the Moyne Shire is making to the wind industry, et cetera, and I'd like a balance there, because I think we're batting above our weight as far as our carbon offset. So I'd just like to draw your attention to that.
Thanks, Councillor Gleeson. I'll take that as a question for Ms Farrell to add to a response down the track. Any other questions? All right, seek a mover for the motion, please. Yes, Councillor Lockett has moved, seconded by Councillor Smith. Councillor Lockett as the mover.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a fantastic program. Bit of a shame to see that we didn't have quite the uptake, but maybe that's something we can work out through our comms team and advertise it a bit more and get some more people to uptake, because anything and everything we can do to reduce our emissions, we're seeing, you know, at the recent summit that things are getting worse, not better, in terms of, you know, the urgency for needing a reduction in our emissions. So it's a good program. I'd like to see it, you know, expanded and to which we're looking into.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Lockett. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. No, I think this is a good outcome to support local groups to assist in the carbon offset for our light vehicle fleet in the Shire, so I commend it. Thank you.
Any other councillors would like to speak to the motion? Okay, Councillor Lockett as the mover.
No further need. Thank you, Acting Mayor.
Councillors voting on item 18. All those in favour? That motion is carried 7-0. Item 19 is the Domestic Animal Management Plan for 2021 to 2025. Ms Farrell, again, thanks.
Thank you. So through the Acting Mayor, this review of the Domestic Animal Management Plan is actually a statutory requirement under the Local Government Act, and we are required to provide the updated plan to the Department of Jobs, Regions and Precincts by the 4th of December. So the plan has been out for comment and exhibition. The key areas of comment have been around stray animals, feral cats and general management of animal litter. In addition to concerns around the protection of the hooded plover in terms of enhanced patrols and better education for their protection, as well as enhancing our promotion of animals who are available for rehousing. So that commentary from the consultation has been taken into account in terms of our actions going forward. So the report is there to adopt as per the recommendation, so that we can proceed to send this one off to the department.
Thanks, Ms Farrell. Any questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Gleeson.
Just a comment, if I may, Mr Acting Mayor. One of the great things in the report is the promotion of the rehousing, you know, and I think that's, we mentioned social media and the impact that it can have, you know, terrific outcome if we can achieve it, so that's a really good part of the report.
Hard to shape that into a question, but I'll take that.
I started with it's a comment.
I know. It's time for questions.
I've got a question. I was wondering if you think that the promotion of the rehousing is of benefit.
Yes, I do.
Oh, lovely,
Okay,
thank you.
thanks. Any other questions, councillors? All right, I seek a mover, please. Councillor Gleeson has moved. Councillor Foster seconded. Councillor Gleeson.
A statutory obligation has to be done. You know, it's trying to draw attention to the things that we need to be good at with our visual staff out and about and, you know, doing their job, and particularly the education process around our keeping of our animals, etc., etc. And I love the fact that we really promote the rehousing of animals. And I've got nothing else to say.
Thanks, Councillor. All right, Councillor Foster, a seconder.
I also love the promotion of rehousing of animals. It's always a good thing. And in light of the earlier conversation we had around dogs and dog attacks and so forth, I commend this to the general public to read, because it's a good educational piece, because it is about, it's got three overarching objectives. The first one is to increase the enjoyment people receive from their pet. The second is to reduce the incidence of problems within the community related to pets being a nuisance or causing injury to people or other animals. And the third one is to contribute to improving the health and well-being of pets, especially those needing rehousing, I'm sure. But I think this is essential reading for any dog owner in the Moyne Shire, and any dog owner who plans on visiting the Moyne Shire. So the beginning of perhaps a new education process. So I commend the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Foster. Any other councillor would like to speak to the motion? All right, Councillor Gleeson is the mover.
I'd just like to reiterate that I take this seriously, and it is a good report. So I just, you know, it has to be done, and yeah, happy to support it.
Thank you. Okay, councillors voting on item 19. All in favour, please. That motion is carried 7-0. Item 20, we're up to Audit and Risk Management Committee biannual report. for Mr. Ledden to introduce. Thanks.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Won't take that as a lack of interest from Councillor Smith, but... So, councillors, as you know, the Council's Audit and Risk Committee is a requirement of the Local Government Act. Under the new 20 Local Government Act, there's some additional requirements for the committee, one of them being a biannual report to Council. Probably take this opportunity to acknowledge the 3 independent members of that committee. Probably firstly, Brian Denson, a lot of you would be aware of, was a long-serving committee member and chair, and he bowed out and has been replaced by Michael Gunn. So we're presenting this report from Michael as the chair. Other independent members are Bonnie Holmes and John Duffield. They're joined on the committee by councillors Mead and Dukas. So this report sets out the responsibilities of the committee and matters that's been under its oversight and review. So as the report tells you, the committee is looking at oversight of financial and performance reporting, risk management, fraud prevention systems and controls, sound internal control environment, internal and external audit, and compliance. So really, it's about supporting council's good governance. So there's a lot of matters that come before the committee. If you have a look at Michael Gunn's report and the matters being considered, I would hope that it gives council confidence that those matters are being attended to appropriately by the committee. So happy to take questions, Acting Mayor, but the recommendation to comply with the Local Government Act is that this biannual report from the committee be endorsed by council.
Thanks, Mr. Ledden. Do we have any questions, councillors? Okay, I'll seek a mover, please. Councillor Dukas has moved, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Councillor Dukas is the mover.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. As Mr. Ledden said, it's a biannual report. If you have a look at the 2 yellow pages and the number of headings, there is a lot of reports in there. I know it's only a 2-pager, but if you wish, you can get a copy of the whole report and get some good bedside reading. It is interesting. And as Mr. Ledden said, and the other officers, we've heard today about how well the Shire is going. And if you look at our financial report, well, it's the Audit and Risk Committee that keeps an eye on all those things, as well as the OH&S issues as well. Fraud, internal audits, etc., etc. So a good report, even though it's brief. The full report is there for anybody who wishes to look at, but I can assure you that the Audit and Risk Committee are doing a great job, and with the external internal auditors, keep a very tight rein on what goes on. So I'd like to congratulate them and the officers on the committee, and of course the independents, because they're the ones that know what's going on, because they're outside local government, but they're in the audit game in big business, and their knowledge is terrific to lean on to get some sort of future findings on how the council can do its job a little better. I'm not saying it's not doing a good job, but there are tweaks that come out of the audit report that make the job a lot better for the directors of the council. Thank you.
The seconder?
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. Having the pleasure of sitting on this committee before, I do understand how important it is and how hard the committee actually work. If you don't get your audit and your risk sorted out, you as a council, you really have or could run into some serious problems. The summary of the works performed in the report here takes you through basically the depth and the breadth that this committee goes through. It really is an all-encompassing one, and is one of the most important committees that we do have. And I commend the work that they do and have done and will do in the future. So I have no hesitation in seconding this report.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Would any other councillor like to add to the motion? Okay, Councillor Dukas to summarise. Okay, councillors voting on item 20. All those in favour? Motion's carried 7-0. Item 21 is the CEO Employment and Remuneration Advisory Committee minutes. So CEO will vacate the room temporarily, as declared a conflict earlier. I'll ask Mr. Ledden to introduce. Thanks.
Thanks, Acting Mayor. So, councillors, this report presents the confidential minutes of Council's Chief Executive Officer Employment and Remuneration Advisory Committee. It should be pointed out that all 7 councillors are members of that committee. So you've all sat on that committee and considered the matters in relation to the performance review and setting performance objectives for the Chief Executive Officer for 2022, reviewed that performance for 2021, and considered remuneration matters. So they have all been considered to be satisfactory to Council, and what this recommendation does is Council endorsing the committee's minutes and therefore the motions that you put forward and adopted at that committee in relation to all the performance matters and remuneration of the Chief Executive Officer. So that also complies with the requirements of the Local Government Act. So happy for any questions, Mayor, but that is the recommendation to endorse those minutes and recommendations of the committee.
Thanks, Mr. Ledden. Any questions, councillors? All right, I'll seek a mover for this motion, please. Councillor Foster has moved. Councillor Purcell has seconded. Councillor Foster.
I don't think there's anything further that we need to add to that. We were all present, so
Yep.
Just happy to commend that.
Thank you. Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, just briefly, considering the only appointment that the councillors do is the CEO, I think it is obviously a great thing that the 7 of us sit down and work through the issues and set the KPIs for the CEO, and also his remuneration. So, considering all of us have put this report together, that I think it'll be surprising if we don't support it.
Any other councillor would like to speak to the motion? All right, Councillor Foster is the mover.
Well,
Sorry, yep, Councillor Dugas, go ahead.
thank you. Yeah, a clarification. The minutes are stamped confidential. Will they be lifted after the vote? Or just the remuneration? Because if I remember correctly, normally in the recommendation, we have the CEO's remuneration. I reckon we've done that in the past.
I'll check with Mr. Ledden.
Through me, I'll probably take that one on notice. I would have thought not, Councillor Dukas, but we'll have to check.
Because the CEO's remuneration is a public document, the amount he receives.
Yep, okay, so Mr. Ledden will take it on notice and will come back to us with that clarification. Thanks, Councillor Dugas. Are you speaking to the motion?
Yeah. Speaking to the motion, yeah, I support the motion.
Righto. Okay, Councillor Foster has already mentioned nothing further to add, so we'll now put item 21 to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried 7-0. We will now ask Mr. Miller to return, and we'll move on to the Mayor and Councillors' reports. And we have listed there meetings that I've attended, but also that all councillors have attended, date, location, and what type of meeting event they were. So do we have any questions out of those? Going. Oh. Moving on to item 23. Council notice of motion, none lodged. So item 24 is general matters. Any general matters that councillors or directors would like to raise? Yes, Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Given the double vax rates and the easing of restrictions, it's game time in the Shire again, and there's an absolute packet of fantastic, I don't know if you can call them packet, but I just did. There's a heap of fantastic events coming up in the Shire. Port Fairy Adventure Film Festival on the 22nd to the 28th of November is a phenomenal event, so I encourage you, if you haven't been, to go. The Folkies on next year, Music in the Vines at Macarthur on the 5th of Feb, Croyd Irish Festival, Croyd Truck Show, Moyniana. We're back on. Very exciting that there's events across the great Shire of Moyne.
Thanks, Councillor Lockett. I do agree with those sentiments. Any other councillor would like to add general matters? Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Look, I was going to take the opportunity to thank the previous mayor, but it may be a little bit premature to go into that, but so I might leave it at the moment.
Well, I would consider myself the previous mayor who's sitting here temporarily. Any other general matters? I'd just like to add a quick general matter that Council would very much like to congratulate Ken and June Brooks for their hard work in their hardware over 45 years. Has done a great job, and I suppose a lot of the materials from that shop would have built what we see in Port Fairy today over the span of time they've been open. So, of course, hardware will still be open, but with new ownership. So we thank the Brooks for their great effort and contribution to the Moyne, but Port Fairy community in particular. So we wish them well in their retirement. Any further general matters? Okay, moving on to urgent business. There is no urgent business to be dealt with today. Item 26 is the CEO meeting schedule and activities report. We'll ask Mr. Millard to introduce that. Thanks.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Council is happy to take any questions on any of the meetings that have occurred over the last few weeks, or any questions generally on the operations and activities report. I think if I could just say up front that I am very appreciative of the way our staff continue to roll with the punches on all matters COVID related. We've had a brilliant take-up of vaccine internally. We're amending our processes and our services and operations to fit the changes in the Chief Health Officer's advice, and you know, I think it would be fair to say that the long-standing lockdown through August, September was, you know, it does certainly take its toll on people, and the complications of home life, family life, work life, you know, kids, etc., etc. So just a bit of a shout out to all staff, I think, but happy to take questions, Acting Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Millard. I'll invite questions in two parts. Do we have any questions firstly on the meeting schedule? Just be explained enough there. Mr. Millard, we have no questions on the meeting schedule, so do we have any questions on the CEO activities report? Yes, Councillor Foster.
Just a small one, Mr. Millard. In the resource recovery and waste management section, the service requests for bin repairs seem to have a bit of a spike. Is there any particular reason, or was there a problem with vandalism, or is it just...
Through you, Acting Mayor, I might actually take that one notice. I'm not sure Ms Farrell would it's a good point. There is a spike, so yeah, I'm not sure what the situation is there. Councillor Foster. Mr. Ledden?
Mr. Ledden.
Through me, just anecdotally, but I have had reports of quite heavy bins.
Right.
If I could add to that, Mr. Acting Mayor, if I could just add, how heavy is too heavy? Is our machinery up to speed with what is required?
Thank you.
I'll take that one on notice.
Yes, take that on notice. Very good. Any other questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'll remove my mask. Thank you. In reference to the Avenue of Honour in Mortlake, a revised plan has been submitted to Heritage Victoria. I was just under the impression that that was all bedded down and virtually ready to go. So I'm just wondering at some time if we get an update where we're going with that, because it's been going on for a long time.
Through Acting Mayor, certainly has. I think unless Ms Farrell, you wanted to chip in, we'll take that one on notice and provide a detailed update back to councillors.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
I might just ask a question through Mr. Miller, probably to Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis, Port Fairy were very fortunate and well deserving of getting the silver medal in the Small Towns Australian Tourism Awards. Great effort for all the business operators, hospitality providers, etc., that offer a great service to visitors. Also, I'd like to just add there that it's great work by our team in tourism with the Visitor Information Centre. I think they do a great job there. Not only our team, but the volunteers who contribute their time, especially during the busy periods, have also contributed to being successful in this award. What will this mean, Mr. Davis, to Port Fairy to be able to claim to be the silver medalist for the Port Fairy, for the small towns of the nation.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I think it's a credit across the board, first of all, to the people that you've identified, and also our existing tourism operators across the board for the product. We're lucky enough to have a geographically wonderful product in Port Fairy, and all of it has to offer, but you've still got to service it adequately, and we've got the best, and let's not forget it's still the best in Victoria. It is Victoria's top tourist town, when we find out where the winning town is, we might go and visit it, so we're a bit surprised ourselves. But what does it mean? We're the recipient of additional advertising for this summer and through the television networks, to the tune of, I think, of around $15,000 worth of advertising, which is terrific. And we'll also we've had profile pieces on some of the state networks already with regards to that result, as well as in the national papers. So all in all, it's been terrific to be a part of. We're keen to keep going on that momentum and hopefully build on that for next year. But it is, as you said at the start, a real credit to the operators, the staff, the VIC, everyone involved, even our customer service, through a very trying period of time to receive that accolade.
Thanks, Mr. Davis. Yes, Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to congratulate the team on achieving that result. It's a great result. I'd just like to pass on, though, that some of the town entrance signs are getting a bit shabby. In particular, the one on the Princes Highway near Sun Farmer. It's had a little bit of vandalism, but it's also fading quite significantly, and I presume there's a program in place to have those replaced, but it is starting to be a little bit shabby.
Well, we got the silver. Thanks, Councillor Purcell. Yes, Councillor Dugas.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. In relation to those entrance signs, the one out on the Bessie Bell Road has been laying on the side of the road for at least 6 months. Now, it's not far from the Glenelg sign, and they replaced theirs in a matter of days. Surely we can keep up the Glenelg.
Yep, thank you very much. We'll, through Ms Farrell, we'll lodge that as a service request. Thank you. Anything else for Mr Millard?
Yeah, I've got one. Thank you, Mr. Well, it's mainly for Mr Davis. Could he explain to the community listening the 1 kilometre setback from host wind farm boundaries in relation to new residences?
Thank you. Through you, thank you, Councillor Dugas, and through you, Acting Mayor. So in October of this year, a statewide amendment to all farming zones was gazetted, which essentially changed, was to support the ongoing operation of wind energy facilities and amenity protections for nearby accommodation uses. In short, it requires that a dwelling must be located more than 1 kilometre from the nearest title boundary of land subject to a permit for a wind energy facility. So not from a turbine, but from the edge of the property of the said wind farm. It doesn't preclude you applying, subject to the lot sizes and schedules of the farming zone, for a dwelling closer than that, but that is certainly what the state's brought in as the must, in terms of must be located more than 1 kilometre from the nearest title boundary.
Thanks, Mr Davis. That clear it up, Councillor Dugas?
Yep, terrific. Thank you. They've explained it. Anybody wants to tune in.
And just to qualify, sorry, through you, that was a statewide amendment. Council had no participation in that. That was applied across the board.
Thanks. Mr Davis, any other questions for item 26?
One more.
Yes, Councillor Dugas.
Mayor. And it's in relation to the MacArthur Wind Farm and Mr Lewis's monthly noise logger reports, I would suppose you call them. I think he sent 3 in to date, 3 monthly ones. What are we doing with those reports? Council should have copies. Council laws, I should say.
Thanks, Councillor Dugas. Mr Millard?
Yeah, thanks, councillor Dukas. I think we'll take those on notice and respond accordingly. So the 3 monthly logged reports.
Yep,
Yes.
okay.
I mean, it's been brought up a couple of times, especially in workshop.
Thanks, councillor
So if we
Dukas.
could find out, that'd be good.
That request has been recorded. Anything else, councillors, on the item 26? Okay, we will...
Sorry, Mr Acting Mayor.
Right, we've got another bonus one from councillor Dukas. Go ahead.
Yeah. The planning scheme amendments, VCs, well, in here we got VC 171, 211, et cetera. Can Mr Davis at the next workshop just give us a brief overview of what they all entail? I mean, there's a website here, but I've tried to log on to one of them. It seems to be round and round in circles. So just a brief overview of what they mean and if there's any implications for the Moyne Shire.
Thanks, councillor Dugas. Mr Davis to take that, please.
Through you, Mayor, happy to provide an overview of the recent statewide amendments at the next workshop.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you. That's good. Terrific.
Any other questions for item 26? No? All right. Before we leave the open agenda, I'll just finish off, before I seek a mover for a motion that we move into confidential, I'll just finish off by saying that it's my view that Moyne Shire places very high standards on the following the correct democratic process and getting it right. So the public will be updated as soon as possible on where we go from here on the mayoral election. So thanks everyone for their patience. We're confident that it will be sorted in the very near future. I'll now seek a mover for a motion that the open meeting be closed in order that confidential agenda items be considered. I'll seek a mover, please. Councillor Lockett's moved, seconded by Councillor Purcell. All in favour? Motion's carried 7-0. Thanks everyone for bearing with us and joining us at home.